Hey everyone, today I'm very excited. Welcome back to this channel, and we are looking into something very super useful in terms of building a distributed system and background workers in terms of using delay queues majorly in RabbitMQ. My name is Samson Anami, and today I'll be taking you through this tutorial. You'll understand a number of items within the tutorial, and before then we can first define what's a delay queue, or rather what's a queue. So this delay queue is it's the same as how it sounds. It's a queue whereby it waits for a certain period of time before it delivers a message. So what are the use cases of this tutorial of today? So first, you might use it in email or SMS reminders. For example, you want to send some people reminders after a certain particular type of a particular amount of time. Also, you can use it in auto cancelling, maybe unpaid order. An order has stayed for 30 minutes. Now we can cancel it and maybe ask the customer or the user to recreate the order if they want to continue proceeding just for data clearance. You can also use it to retry when you're doing exponential backoffs in terms of a process that you need to automate the reverse engineering that particular process. And also we can use it also to schedule notification. But today, the major reason why I bumped into this, I was doing an implementation whereby we are doing we are calling an external system, or rather, let's say for example you're calling a tax system or a government system or a public system in the public sector or stuff like that. So once you fire that request, you might receive either a success or a fail depending on how the servers appear. So that one now will mean you'll need to do a retry later on. So that's how I decided to implement it using RabbitMQ, and I felt it's good if I share with you guys. So how does a RabbitMQ right now handle delay queues? So two ways, or maybe majorly two approaches that are there in RabbitMQ. One is using the DXL, that's the dead letter exchange, combined with the TTL, which is time to leave for the messages. And number two is using the RabbitMQ delayed queue plugin, which I wouldn't want to go into that extent of having another plugin to do a delay queue. So we'll go with option one for today's tutorial. And so let's dive into it. So here it's how it will work. So let's say we're having a client here, or a customer, or maybe a user trying to access our backend. So first they'll schedule, or rather they'll do an action which will be scheduled from the system into our Spring Boot service. So in this tutorial also, it's good to mention that I'll be using Spring Boot to implement this, because it has a very easy implementation and quick to go, and very robust also at the same time. Yeah, so this producer service of ours will pick this request or a scheduled job, and then it will queue it in our initial queue, that is the main queue, which for this case we'll call it YouTube notifications. That's the initial one. Then, so being in that first Q1, the queue will be consumed with this delay MS service. So this service will consume our notification immediately they land into our queue. Then once after it consumes them, now this is where it will try maybe to do a REST API onto an external third-party system. If the cloud is okay, or if the connection is okay, no intermittency, no any failure, it will return its success and then respond back to whoever was calling the API, be it a mobile app, or maybe a web, or stuff like that, or USSD, or any other channel that you can use to access our system, or maybe even a middleware. So into that it will respond. But if a failure occurs, this is where now our work starts. So we have these cluster of queues that we have created here, so-called delay queues that we have created in RabbitMQ. So this queue will have queue number 1, queue number 2, and queue number 3, which all will be using them as delay queues. So if a failure has occurred, instead of returning it immediately to this queue, because if you return it immediately, it will be consumed immediately. So you'll have the second queue here, whereby you send it into this queue, and then now this queue will have a delay. So it will delay, will give it a time to live, that's TTL of 5,000, which is 5,000 milliseconds, which is 5 seconds. And then out of that, then we will return it back to our queue for the second consumption. If the second consumption now fail again, the same thing will happen. You consume the queue, but now it will not send into queue number 1. So the next one, it will automatically send to queue number 2. So automatically from here, if it fails for the second time, it will now send to queue number 2. That's it, yes. So after this, it has sent to queue number 2. Let's say, let me put it this way. Let me put it this way here. I hope you'll understand what it means. Rather this way. Yes, okay. Yeah. So something like that. Oh, okay, right. So, but you get it. So this will be the second time. Then the third time it will send to our final queue. So that's what will be happening. Then the second queue now will delay for 15 seconds and then return it back to our queue for the second processing. The third queue, on this we are doing an update, and that's where I want to show you how you can now keep track of this one without using any other external database or maybe external API to store to make this stateful. But you can still use just our queues to make them stateful, so that we know this is the retry number 2 and this is the retry number 3. Yeah, so that's the architecture. Let's jump into the code. So in here, I'll be using RabbitMQ, but I'll do it via Docker. So I'll just use the Dockerized version of it, and so you can check it online. I'll just see the last request that I used to. So you can use whichever image. There's Rabbit image which are there online that you can easily use to do this request. So for example, for my case, can't remember the image that I put, but I think it's RabbitMQ latest. That's the image that I pulled from Docker. So just use that image, and then you can spin up your container within Rabbit to just make it easy. It's a quicker way of doing it. And then now we can start our server. Like we can just say docker start or run, whichever, docker run, then we say Rabbit server, because I already have this container in here created. Yeah, so the image was RabbitMQ, this one, and then now my container we called Rabbit server. So you can just spin up that pretty quickly, and then this server will start, and then it will expose an endpoint for us. You can control click, and then you'll see, I think I had opened it previously, so you can see it here. So this is our server. Of course it will come with the login, and then you put your username and password. So in here I've left it free, no virtual host, no exchange, no queues, nothing, just the user. I want to try to create it with my source code, all those setups, so that I also show you how that is done. Yeah, so after that, we having Spring Boot already spinned up. We'll now spin up our having the RabbitMQ container running. Now we can now create our Spring Boot app. So this is an easier way to spin up a Spring Boot app for beginners, that is. So you go to this start.spring.io, then this one will bootstrap for you an easy app. So what we just need to do is let me just refresh to be sure, so that I show you guys. So here you just pick Maven, and then pick Java as a language, is the management package manager. You pick Maven, and then pick the language is Java. You can use Kotlin or Groovy, whichever one that is familiar with you. And then here you can just put your your project details, put the name for your project and stuff like that. Select jar, then the latest version of Java that you have installed, the JDK that you're having in your setup in your machine. Then here a number of dependencies we need, like RabbitMQ, and then we'll need another dependency like Spring Web, stuff like that. You can even have Lombok, so many other that you might need when you're doing your project. Then you can explore to just pick the to copy the POM file, or also you can just download or generate the code. This one now will generate for you a very nice zip file of your project, and then you can open that in IntelliJ IDE or use whichever any other IDE that you're having. So that's how we spin up our Spring Boot app. And then now, having our Spring Boot app, I'll just take you through the app itself. So here we go. So I spinned up this app, and then on here I have a number of arrangements here. For example, I like to put configs in a different file. Then if I'm doing consumers, for example, I'm doing a Q consumer, I just have a consumers folder. If I'm doing controllers for the business logic and stuff, for the application logic, I'll just do controllers, and then under controller I'll put my business logic, my application logic, sorry. And then on my business logic, I just create something called services here, and then within it I just create a number of services to do that. So here I have my application file, but before then, let me see our POM if you missed any dependencies. So these are the dependencies that we need within our POM. So you can spin up this, go to I'll share this source code in JIT, so you can just spin up this, go to your go to the Spring Boot initializer, and bootstrap an app with the same dependencies. On our application property file, now this is where now we start our development journey. So initially we will have all these ones set up, like the application name, and then this is where now Rabbit comes in. We'll set up a Rabbit host, which is localhost. So this one I've just picked it from our spinned up Rabbit, or rather dockerized Rabbit. So I'll just pick this host and then this port. So this port, when you're spinning up your Rabbit, you need to specify it. When you're spinning it up, you need to specify, like you see in my command, to expose a port from a Rabbit from the container or onto the host, which is your local machine, so that you can have this local version of it. Is an easiest way instead of going to install the entire RabbitMQ. So on here we'll have the local store, and then the port, local host, and the port here. I'll have the port here set, and then my username, here is my password, and then I'll have a vhost, which I haven't created. I'll have a notification, blah blah blah. So these are the queues. So this is the major queue, I'll call it YouTube notification. This is my routing key, I'll call it alert. And then this is my exchange for the initial messages, and then this one is my first delay queue. I'll call it YouTube notification queue delay. So this is the first delay queue. But let's see. So after here I'll have consumers, and then there's config. So I'll want you to see also this config of mine. So this is where I spin up everything within Rabbit. So first I'll define a delay exchange. I'll the main queue, and then I'll have the date letter exchange. So here is just static parameters that I define, which are I showed you in the diagram. We have the delay queue, we have the main queue called delay YouTube delay consumer and stuff like that. But I want this one to be created with my source code. That's what I'm trying to do. So here I'll define a topic. I'll define a topic in here, of course, with the delay exchange, and then also I'll have the so this is the delay exchange. I'll define the delay exchange, and also I'll define the main exchange. And then in here I'll have the topic exchange, and then the dead letter exchange that is there to to route it back. Like what is happening is we'll have in these two items. So the routing key that will be used by these sorry, just a second. Yeah, so the delay queue that will be used, the exchange that will be used by these delay queues will be the delay exchange. But now the exchange that will be used to queue in here is what now we call the main exchange. So we have two exchanges, to write here and to write using the delay queue. So these are the exchanges that will be very dynamic in terms of the routing key to just tell us which one and which one is coming from which queue and what queue. So in there we have now the delay queue one. As you can see, I have the date letter exchange. I've added the date letter exchange. This one that I told you is for the delays. And then we have the time to leave. So this one I've given it 5,000 milliseconds, which is 5 seconds. And then it will now do this. So this one will definitely define this. This is for the Q1. So this will be the routing key that will tell us within within our consumers that this one came from queue number 1, so that at least we can know this one is coming from queue number 1. When processing again, we can send it to queue number 2 if failure of the same occurs. Same to 2, you will have the same thing spinned up, but now here you'll have queue number 2. Then also you have the delay number 3 with the delay number 3. So in here you can do a delay binding for key number 1, 2, 3. Going ahead. So this is just binding of the queue using the exchange, binding of the queue using the routing key, and how we want now to bind the exchange and the queue, or rather the queue, we bind it to the exchange. So that's binding. And then we have the main consumer here described as the main queue, and also now we have the main consumer binding. So in here, the main consumer binding, because this one is dynamic, as I said, this delay routing key is very dynamic. That's why we have a wildcard here, and so two items here. So in this wildcard, for example, this one means that anything or any router key that has YouTube delay queue dot one word, only one word here, or one other item separated by the dot. So let's say, for example, YouTube delay 1, 2, or maybe YouTube delay red or YouTube delay blue, only that will go into this queue. But if we say YouTube delay queue dot red dot Kenya, or dot red dot let's say Africa, it means it's two of them, so it will automatically be picked by the exchange that is bound to this particular wildcard. So that's why you're having the star and the hash. So for this hash, it means any other thing that is here, it's 2 dot whatever, all these. So it just defines a topic whereby it will now be consuming all those messages that are coming from all the delay queues. So you can easily expand your delay queues, add them into 5, 6, 7, 10, or whichever way that you want to add them. Daily, weekly, monthly, yearly. You can even do stuff like that depending on how your usability is. So that's the initial configuration for that. Now after that, we have now our consumers, our consumer of the queue. So in here, this is where now we read from the main queue the initial messages. So we'll just have a routing key picked from from our message. So this is the routing key that I told you. Now it will be dynamic, so we can read it from the message itself, that dynamic queue being sent into our consumer. And then now using this is where now we can do a switch to determine where or how are we handling that particular delay. For example, we want to handle this one differently, or maybe add something into the data based on how many times. Let's say something like retry count. You want to know how many times have I retried this. So you can say retry count here is 1, you can add blah blah blah, retry count is 2, and stuff like that. So this one will help you for easy identification. And then we just do basic stuff, just pick the body and then pick this stuff, and then you just say message received, and then you echo the routing key, and then you display the message based on the queue. I hope you're getting the sense. So in here in the main, so this is where I'll want to execute my code, which I'll execute because this is a REST endpoint. So So I've just created a REST endpoint which I can use now. I can fire through Postman, and then you can check it out on how it basically works. But this is what you'll have. You should, at least once we fire from the first queue message, you are able to now pick those items depending on the other depending on the queue number, or rather the delay queue. So here is the sender service that we are having, which is sending the delay queue. So this is just a service with the logic to send. So very easy. It's just to pick that and use the Rabbit template to just convert a message that you have sent and a key directly to the root. So this is like the producer now. So we have combined these two. So instead of having a producer and a consumer, so we're having a service that is doing this, and then we are having a controller that is doing this. So all that. So assuming this is the external call, this is what will be happening in here. So we just do an external call here on the delay consumer. So you just be doing an external call. If it fails, then you redirect it to blah 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 to the queue number 2 and stuff like that. So I'll share this source code so that you can play around with it and check how it works. But for now, let us go to Postman and try this out. So in here, I'll first start by running my app, but before then we can. So this one. On the vhost, because of vhost we cannot create it from our it needs some more admin rights and stuff, so we can't create it from our code. So I've commented out this, and then out of that we'll just come to our main class and then spin up our main class, which is this. I'll just run and spin up our main class. You can let me know in your comment if you can create virtual host from the code that is from within Spring Boot. So in here, I'll wait for my service to run. So yeah, so once you see this one, Tomcat started on port 80. So we can go to now. Can look for Postman. Yeah, so in here for Postman, because now this one you're running it on port 8080, and then on our controller we were doing this. So we were doing API/delay, and then we are having a delay queue ID here. So we'll just do a localhost 8080 because of the Tomcat port where the Spring Boot app started, and then we have API/delay queue, and then we have now the queue, the delay queue number or the flag. And then on the parameters, that's where now I'll put my message. I'll say hello there, I'm happy. Yeah, so this is the message that we want to send into the queue. And now if we do that, it should automatically create for us so message sent to the queue, hello there, I am happy. That's the response that you're getting, and then it should be able to have now created all our queues. Yeah, so we have in the exchange we'll have the YouTube delay exchange, and then we have the YouTube main exchange, and then we have the queue number 1, queue number 23, and then our main queue here as classic. So as you can see here, this one has TTL, DLX. Let me know if you want more tutorials on RabbitMQ, but this is where you'll put the argument. Like let's say if I want TTL, if I'm creating a queue, I'll just pick the virtual host, select classic, and then put a queue name here. Then after that, now I'll put stuffs like, let's say if I want a TTL, I'll just tap on this one, and then it will give me message TTL. I'll put a value. If I want to overflow dead letter routing key, blah blah blah, I'll put it that way. So that way it will form this, but now we have done it through our code, which is much safer and much easier to even maintain. Yeah, but now this one, notice that it will need now the user that you're using to log in to have those rights to create queue and probably modify queue and stuff. So that's what will be happening. We can still monitor our queue to just see on how the messages are coming in and out. Like here you can see it's connected to one consumer. Of course we didn't put pooling, or rather we didn't put concurrency. We just said one consumer, and then for the binding you'll see it's bound to the delay queue with that routing key to the YouTube main exchange. So let's send one message here. Let's send one message on our postman, or we had already sent one message there, so it should at least show something on the delay Q1. Probably we should be having, was it 10 minutes ago or something? So you should be having a message sent there, and if I say I sent on queue number 2, it should still also be able to show me that there is a message which has gone to queue number 2. Let me see in a second. Yeah, so you can put some you can say like some 10 minutes, or maybe say like last 1 minute I have no messages, the last 10 minutes. If I send something here, you should be able to see it in the exchange loading here. So it will say last minute. At least you should have something loaded in here for delay, both the main exchange and the delay for the delay queue exchange. Yeah, so I'll show you next on where the batch processing, where you're sending the batch. But let me do the next tutorial because of the video being long, to do the test. And so let me know in the comment in whichever area that you want me to do much deeper dive, or maybe to do hands-on together, so that you can see that. Thank you, and see you on the next hands-on testing tutorial.